Today I'm talking to David, one of our clients in County Tipperary. David had a care from ALHomecare for 5 months. Hello, David.
Hello, Tom.
How are you today?
Good, thanks for having me.
David, how did you hear about ALHomecare in the first place?
I believe it was mentioned by a connection of ours in the medical world, probably in the autumn of 2020, and then I went online and did an extensive search and looked at the web resources and so forth, and liked what I saw, and made contact with the office administration staff by phone first of all, and found that very helpful, and then moved on to prepare a profile on the household and on the individuals in it.
And what were the circumstances that led you to contact ALHomecare in the first place?
Well, my mum, who had gone into her early 80s, had various procedures in the previous couple of years, which all had taken a bit out of her, but she was still in pretty good fettle. But there were kind of new medical revelations which were linked to that. And while there was no immediate concern, there was a growing realization that as autumn 2020 headed into 2021, and perhaps in the second half of 2021, there would be perhaps a need for enhanced support at home, notwithstanding the COVID situation, which had relocated me to working from home increasingly. It would still be useful to have an extra pair of hands, and for that reason, it was thought useful to make contact, to fill out a profile, and register with the company.
What has it been like having a live-in carer in your household?
It was great, really. First of all, we were fortunate at the time. We matched with a number of profiles from a number of different European countries, people with very interesting skill sets. My mum suffered from lower back difficulties from a condition called spinal stenosis, which would cause lower back, buttock and thigh discomfort after mobilizing for a period. While she was still getting around well, a number of these individuals had kind of quasi-physiotherapy or complementary skills, yoga, Pilates, and so forth, including the lady that we selected. That kind of skill set is great, particularly when a number of the individuals, including the lady we selected that matched with us, had previously dealt with similar circumstances with her own parents, and indeed a previous healthcare support situation where she was looking after the elderly parent of a neighbour in her native city. And I found it very helpful that there was kind of an established awareness, even moving to a different culture and a different linguistic situation, that many things were still the same, and that there was an automatic awareness. So that kind of thing can't really be bought. It comes from, I suppose, a long period of experience and awareness that's brought with one as part of the package. So that was one aspect that was extremely beneficial to the household, along with kind of matter of fact can-do attitude, but always with a heart. And I found that having the support at a whole series of levels in the household, whether it was from a kind of a mental well-being, physical education, exercise, yoga, Pilates point of view, or whether it was from projects related to dietary, or shall we say culinary skills or gardening skills point of view, or whether it was related to just taking a bit of pressure off in regard to domestic support in some aspect of the house, cleaning or maintenance point of view. It was a really gold standard overall package.
And David, what advice would you give to a family who might be struggling right now with the care needs of an elderly relative?
I suppose the first thing is that these things evolve over time. I know some people are in the unfortunate position that an elderly relative is suddenly struck down from being really quite good to being utterly incapacitated by, say, a heart attack or a stroke, an accident, or some such thing. But I suppose the majority, or quite a number of people I've come across, my contemporaries in similar situations, it's an evolving thing. It could be the gradual onset of dementia or mobility problems. It could be some other health situation. But if there is any choice in the matter, it's always better to plan in time and move slowly rather than to have to panic and kind of manically try and bring something together to get a quick fix in as few days or weeks as possible, regardless of what the elderly relative might feel. So if there is a situation where something is happening, it's better to broach the subject gently and gradually over an extended period, even to go as far as getting a profile prepared and registering with the company, even if there has to be a period of dormancy while the idea is got used to, and perhaps even to do a couple of talks with people that are pre-selected with a view towards getting a resident live-in assistant. And whether it happens or not immediately on that time, whether the carer gels with the elderly person online or not, at least it can be a process towards which, hopefully, if not the first time, maybe as a subsequent outing, that success will be achieved. Obviously, some people are going to be in a position where the elderly relative is utterly incapacitated by this incident or accident or whatever it is, and then obviously that choice is not there. But then perhaps they may be looking at other options in that case anyway. But that's just my advice from my perception and my bit of experience to date.
And David, it's fairly common that an elderly person will resist the idea of a live-in care. Did you find that to any extent with your own elderly relative?
Yeah, maybe a little bit. It was never actually put in so many words, but let's say that when the registration was done and the initial profile matches were achieved, there was an interview or two done either by myself alone or with the elderly relative. And at that particular time, the medical issues were far from acute. In fact, you wouldn't know there were any in terms of the medication at that point being taken, and the physical activity was still pretty good at that time being achieved. So for those reasons, it was viable to agree with the elderly relative that this could be left for 3 to 6 months, and indeed it was, and successfully so. But certainly there came a time then when the elderly relative themselves led on the need for the acquisition or the activation of our pre-existing registered profile with you, and to update it and to get things going. But actually that was quite late on in the process, and that mercifully the elderly relative was able to do many things for herself right up until shall we say the final 8 weeks or so. But definitely there's a lot to be said for letting things evolve, doing things in time, and not being hastened slowly, I suppose, is the answer.
And finally, David, is there anything else you'd like to add about the experience?
Well, my own situation was unusual. The elderly relative selected actually was very hands-on. Perhaps more so than in many situations, where actually she selected from the short list of available persons the successful candidate, subject to that lady being interested in coming to us, which she was, and also organised the location of the accommodation in the house and every little detail like that, from her hospital bed, as she had been admitted to a hospital at that stage. And unusually, it took a very short time really for the lady to come to Ireland. I think it was all achieved within 2.5, maximum 3 weeks. And unusually within a a number of days of the arrival of the assistant in Ireland, the elderly relative passed away while still in hospital. So there was a most unusual situation evolved then, whereby it was an incredibly unusual period for the household, and the recently arrived resident care assistant was possessing a very useful skill set, in that she had recently been bereaved of both of her parents, well, both in the previous 8 years, one just 3 to 4 years earlier, and had also the very relevant skill sets around promoting mental well-being through exercise and Pilates and yoga, external activities, whether it was gardening or cooking or recipes, projects, and so forth. So instead of extending those much anticipated and valuable skills to the elderly relative, she was able to stay on and extend them to the household, the bereaved household of the recently deceased elderly relative. And it was really wonderful, because during a period, several things came to play. For example, within a week of the passing of the elderly relative, there was obviously requiem services taking place. There was in-house support during that period, even from a security point of view when one was away at church, even from a domestic point of view when, albeit in COVID times, a limited number of relatives and close friends were coming and going. And then when the dust had settled after all of that, there was still a constant in the house with great relevance and empathy and support from a point of view of domestic assistance and all of the aforementioned attributes of indoor and outdoor support. So it just goes to show that the agency assistants that are recruited from across Europe can have a role to play in more than the originally anticipated aspect, such that if a situation happens where somebody is admitted to hospital, or somebody unfortunately passes away during a placement, that it can be useful, and it can even be beneficial to both the assistant for the experience and the household for the support, that the contract is continued in a way, shall we say, closely related to what was intended, albeit not for the originally intended individual. And it's just so amazing how these things can evolve kind of organically and work around the originally intended paperwork. But I was very impressed with the support, for example, that the carers get from the agency, and also the kind of continuing professional development which is possible, which again remains possible regardless of whether the care assistant is caring for an elderly person or a not so elderly person, or any person at all at a given moment, and to complete their modules while living in a different environment and adding to their existing skill set.
Well, David, it's been very interesting to talk to you today about your particular experience of having a live-in care from our agency, and I'm sure families will have learned a lot from listening to you. And I thank you for taking the time to talk to me, and I wish you and your family the best in the future.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, David.